Welcome to the Embracing Race podcast. All episodes were recorded in advance, so don't be alarmed if the timeline seems a little bit cattywampus.
Welcome to another episode of Embracing Race Conversations with Truth and Intention. I am your host, Shani.
And I am your other host, because we're not calling me a co-host. I'm your other host, Jesy Littlejohn.
Jesy, we're on Apple.
We are, finally.
Finally. As an Apple user, it just warmed my heart that I can go to Apple Podcasts and just Google my own podcast on Apple. Yeah,
you can Google your name and it will pop up. Actually, if you Google your name, Shani, you show up on 3 different podcasts. I don't know if you know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, let me pull it up for you right now. If any of our listeners want to just hear and bask in Shani glory, let me see.
Pretty cool.
Spells your name right. Yeah. Yes, you appear on the Chevy Chase Presbyterian Church podcast. You appear, do you know a Shane Burkle?
No.
Oh, because your name pops up for the Shane Burkle podcast, the Couples Therapist Couch. Have you ever been on that podcast?
No.
Well, your name gets mentioned in it then. What about what about Hezekiah Montgomery? Do you know Hezekiah Montgomery?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That's the Man in the Mirror podcast. You're in that too. And then ours right there. For those who watch this on YouTube, there's our podcast right there.
That's so cool. So I did that Hezekiah Montgomery podcast, Jesy, like literally 8 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like 2015.
Let's see. The one
2016, something like that.
Yeah, the one with the Couples Therapist Couch. I think they have it. I don't know why your name comes up because it's talking with Tiffany McLean, not Shani McElwain. But yeah, you're on at least 3 different podcasts.
I gotta go check that out.
Shout out to Chevy Chase Presbyterian Church.
So shout out. I did preach at Chevy Chase during pandemic. And
that's cool. I didn't know they had a podcast though.
I didn't know either. They must have changed. They must have made their sermons into podcasts.
Yeah. Chevy Chase people, if you're listening or if you know of Chevy Chase's podcasts, tell us what they do.
Right.
Or we could probably just listen to it. We support other podcasts.
We do.
Especially within our Presbyterian. Actually, but now that we're on Apple, I feel like we have a whole new listenership. Like Reverend Mary Austin is now listening to our podcast because it's on Apple.
I know. And did you see her Facebook post this morning?
Yes, she said she enjoyed your verb and she thought my voice was beautiful.
Yes.
I'm talking to you, Mary.
Right. But okay. Not that we're gonna get any, mentions, but like what are your go-to podcasts outside of us, of course?
My go-to podcasts. There's one, let me pull it up. So you're just gonna, I feel like I just fit a stereotype because I do. So there's one that's called Pants, P-A-N-T-S, and It's hosted by Kate Moaning and Leisha Haley. And Kate and Leisha are on the L Word. They play Shane and Alice on the L Word. And when they, both the original and the reboot, and I guess when they were on the show, the rest of the cast used to call them Pants because they were always together. And it became like a running nickname and it was on their call sheets and all of that stuff. So they, during the pandemic, just like everybody else, said, hey, let's form a podcast. And they did, and they named it Pants because that's what everybody called them. And then there's a podcast that I listen to occasionally by Tig Notaro, who is a comedian. And She's lesbian.
Okay.
And she does a podcast called Don't Ask Tig. So she generally meets with other lesbians and queer people and actors, like celebrities and stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, they're fun. I just run in the queer circles.
So funny.
Once in a while, I'll listen to like Glennon Doyle or something. But
I didn't get into podcasts like that until pandemic. So there's a guy, his name is Phil Branch. We went to the same college, but I think we're several years apart from each other. I don't know. I think he might be a little bit older than me, because we had a big brother, big sister program in Hampton, and my big brother knew him, and he's like 4 years older than me. Anyway, long story short, he had a podcast he got funding through a DC Arts and Humanities grant, and he titled it Isolation Be Like, right? And so Phil is gay. He was married. So he's married. They had like 5-year-old twins or something. And he just basically recorded like these episodes of just everything, right? From the lockdown to going to Costco to Ahmaud Arbery to, taking his kids to the park and, get profiled, like, and I just like followed him all through pandemic and isolation, right?
Yeah.
And so then out of that, I listened to Ratchet and Respectable. Then there was like the Phoebe, I can't remember her name, but she's a comedian actress and she used to have a podcast. And her name is Phoebe something. I can't remember. Jamel Hill, Unbothered. I listened to her podcast. So I don't know. I think mine are kind of predictable too, because I don't listen to like the top one, like I don't listen to what everybody is.
No.
Yeah.
I've listened to a couple of one-offs. So like for a while, I found it during the pandemic. I think it came out in like 2020, but there was a documentary on HBO called The Vow. And it followed the story of the executive success program, or NXIVM, and like the downfall. And I had never heard of it before then. And I just saw it on HBO and like was like, oh, this is interesting, I'll watch it. And so I like became kind of low-key obsessed with it. And then found a couple of podcasts that were about it. And so I was listening to like the trial and everything about that. But yeah, I don't listen to podcasts all the time. I like have to be really interested or like invested in the people who are doing the interviewing. Yeah. But
same.
I do like the one. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You do like what?
I do like, I feel like we could do almost like a Embracing Race, like almost like the B-side, maybe in season 2 or going forward, where like you and I pick a show or like something like we do with the Oscars or the Super Bowl. Like we do like a commentary on something and just have like the Jesy Shani perspective.
I was totally thinking that, because, and what, it was so funny. I was literally thinking of that like a week ago, because a minister member in our presbytery, now at Trinity Herndon, Mary McKenna Dana, had a limited series podcast called Hope Notes, where she took books or movies and brought in guests to talk about the book or the movie. I knew I didn't have time to read a book, because when you write books, you don't have time to read other people's books unless it's for work, right? And so I was like, so she gave me a list of options, and I chose Coda. So I was like, the movie Coda gave me a reason. I wanted to watch that movie anyway, and it gave me gave me even a better reason to watch the movie and then come on and talk about it. And I loved that format. And I was like,
Yeah.
could we do that? And then you say it, so we're doing it.
Yeah.
Like,
Season 2, it's coming.
yes,
It's coming.
I loved it. It was so good. And I was on there with another person, and it was just so good.
Yeah.
And then Marianne is just a really good interviewer and like really asks like thought-provoking questions.
Yeah. And if you guys, I'm gonna plug Marianne. She has a blog. You can go and subscribe to her blog. If you're a Ted Lasso fan, Marianne does a lot of stuff with Ted Lasso. She has a Substack website, and she has like a sub part of her blog called The Crown and Anchor, where she goes through every single episode of Ted Lasso and gives like a commentary. So
I keep falling asleep. I'm gonna watch it. I don't have to preach this weekend, praise the Lord, but
what?
I keep falling asleep on at the beginning of the show when I should have the line memorized because I've tried to watch it like 3 times now. But when Ted says brevity, he says something about brevity. He's like, but clarity is good too. And I was like, and I gotta go back just to get that quote because he's got the best quotes.
He does have the best quotes.
I want to recognize today, as we record this this episode, that today is national. Is it national or is it international?
I think it's International Trans Day of Visibility.
International Trans Day of Visibility. And okay, so Jesy.
Yes.
We've had this conversation about 3 episodes ago, and I forgot your answer, so I want to apologize. I'm going to ask you again because a mutual friend of ours, we went back and forth. Well, I didn't really go back and forth. I was going back and forth in my head because I didn't know if the person was right. And so, because I referred to you as trans.
Right.
And they were like, no, Jessy's non-binary. And so is there a difference?
So I do believe that some people would say that absolutely there's a difference, but then I feel like if you say that there's an absolute, then that puts you in the category of being binary.
Right.
And so I don't uphold that idea. So I believe that being gender non-binary, which I identify as, falls under the trans umbrella because you cross, and you and I have talked about this, that we cross the boundaries or the binaries of what gender is. So though I do not conform or fit into a female or male like genderized concept, there are certain things about me that are definitely more feminine, and that I have a feminine nature. There are definitely things about me that are more masculine, but I don't hold to either one of those things. I think I present in some ways as very trans masculine. There are other things about me that are incredibly like feminine. Like my voice, I'm never going to be on, I'm never going to take T. I'm never going to take testosterone. That's not part of my journey. That's not something that I want for myself. So my voice is always going to be like this. Unless I get older and something happens to it, and that's that. But like this will be my voice.
Okay.
And it's never going to be masculine. But at the same time, like if we're being completely honest, my goal would be to have top surgery. And I don't want a male contoured chest though. Like I would prefer to have like a bilateral mastectomy, take it all off, call it a day, because that's the body that I would feel more comfortable in, is not having breasts. I don't want a male contoured chest. I have no desire to sit around with my shirt off, go to the beach, take my shirt off. Like that's not what I want.
Right.
I just want to feel comfortable in my own body, but top surgery is very expensive. So there's that. But so like there are so many things about me that I think are a part of the trans community, and being non-binary and not necessarily feeling like I belong in one category or the other, that trans, that you're crossing something, you're crossing the divide, you're crossing the barrier. I feel like it fits under that umbrella. So, and I know a lot of non-binary people who would describe themselves as trans non-binary because they
Okay.
kind of cross that divide.
Okay. Thank you for the education. I just was like, I got so confused, and it's always, and I am 100% going to always be a student, right? So I will never come so when I don't know something, I always shut down, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm like, well, I don't really know if this is accurate, so I'm not going to say anything. And also giving benefit of the doubt to the person that said that is also not in the trans community. So, like, get your info, I want to make sure that we educate people properly in whatever, especially in their allyship, because it was coming from a place of love, right?
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
like, so I just want to make sure that was correct.
Yeah. And I think go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think what's important to remember, just like with anybody's experience, whether, I think a lot of times, like for the Black community, you guys get, you guys, I'm sorry, that's like saying you people, screw that, sorry. But like, I think like somebody will ask you a question and have you represent the entire Black community because you're vocal and so much. And so obviously, Shani, you are the mouthpiece for every Black person in the universe. Yeah. So like my experience, my lived experience and my personal experience and my personal understanding of my identity is different than the person next to me. And I think that's what's great about being trans and being gender non-binary. And for those who identify as gender fluid or gender non-conforming or whatever it may be, like everybody's experience with gender is different.
The bishop has entered the building. What up, though?
I'm sorry, am I late?
You're totally fine.
You're right on time.
How y'all doing?
We're doing well. We're making history today.
Word? That's what's
I've been trying to interview you for my show. We're not going to talk about the other thing that I interviewed you for. I mean, which was amazing, by the way. But
but you can't just drop that in there
on my platform forever, and you're here.
I'm glad to be here. Like I remember those pictures from behind you from the first interview we did.
Yes. So we were supposed to do this interview 2 days ago. We had to reschedule, and I'm talking to like two of my favorite people. Happen to be on. I mean, I think it's. I want to lift it up because today is Trans Visibility Day, International Trans Visibility Day. And I just wanted to just lift that up and be like, so that's what we were talking about because, and I can ask you the same question, Bishop, how do you want to be called on the show?
Well, most people outside of my day job know me as Bishop.
All right.
But Jesy, my government is Shenea, but it started out as a DJ name and then it became so much more. So everybody, sometimes people at my job, Diane Mossett has called me Bishop before. So that's who I am.
That's awesome.
So the question I was sharing with Jesy that I was having lunch with a colleague that we would both consider allies, respective. I would consider the person an ally. And I was speaking about Jesy in our podcast, and I referred to them as trans. And my colleague said, no, they're not trans, they're non-binary. So the question I had asked Jesy was, is there a difference? And they shared their opinion. And so I'd like to get your opinion.
Sure. There is a difference in my mind. So for me, trans is an umbrella term. People who consider themselves transgender are part of that umbrella. but so are non-binary people, gender fluid, gender non-conforming. But trans is like an umbrella term that gathers all people. So there are Black people, but then there are African Americans. There are Black folks who are from Dominican Republic. You know what I'm saying? There's all different kinds of Black people, but they all fit under the umbrella of Black. And so the same thing kind of for trans. So I consider myself non-binary. I don't consider myself trans. However, I realize non-binary falls under the trans umbrella.
Okay, got it.
That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's very similar to what I said.
So I don't even know where to go with this. I'm a Enneagram 7, so I just say what comes to my head, not like spontaneously. But I wanted you on the show just because I love you and I love your vibe and you got a message. And then when I heard you preach in October, because even though you was keynoting, you was really preaching. I was like, everybody needs to know and hear your voice. But then you started like a whole thing, like a whole retreat center. And I was like, I want to promote that. So I guess we'll start with your journey into ministry. Like, can we go back to the very beginning? Like, you were born. No, I'm just kidding.
Wait, before we go there, I need to ask a couple of preliminary questions. You might want to edit these out later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Number one, can I cuss?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because I would struggle if I couldn't.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number two, who is our intended audience?
Okay, so I think we have two different visions because Jesy loves to lift up the PCUSA almost in every single episode.
Do I really?
You do. It's all good, right? But it's okay. I mean, that's our intended audience. And I feel like I want to go beyond that. Like, I feel like I want to reach people who have a faith formation or don't know their faith formation, but I'm never going to not to downplay my faith because it's rooted in everything that I do. But I honestly don't know how to answer that question because it's beyond the church, or at least I want it to be. But I didn't mean to cut you off, but I also want people to know that these are the conversations that the church should be having.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. And I'm glad. I appreciate you breaking it down for me like that. That was very helpful. Let me also say, third thing, and I'm done. My computer is shit. So every now and then my sound will go out, but just give it like 5 seconds and it'll pop right back in.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Got it.
That's per capita at work there. Yeah, so my journey and how I got to be bishop in Abolition House and
Yes.
where I'm at. Okay, cool. So, spoiler alert, I was born Black and queer. I know, I hide it very well. But I think growing up with an intersectional lens kind of already kind of skewed how I saw the world. And so I always knew there was something different about me from a young age. I know even like with my sexual orientation, I didn't know what it was. I just knew there were some girls I really, really wanted to be my friends. I didn't know why I wanted them to be my friends. I just really, really knew I wanted them to be my friends. And then the older I got, I realized I could put a term on it of gay. And so I sat with that for a while and really wrestled a lot in my formative years about, am I an abomination? Am I a mistake? Is this a choice? Who am I? Did I get influenced by some abuse or something like that? And really trying to figure this thing out. And then when I was in college and in seminary, was when I was pretty much solidifying the fact that these feelings weren't going anywhere. And this is who I was going to be. But it still didn't feel quite right? Something still was kind of off. I never liked the term lesbian. Nothing against lesbians, and I gotta say it like that because that's how they say it on Golden Girls. Lesbian. Blanche Devereaux says it. And so, but I still like that was what I most could connect to because that's what I knew and what could put language around. And so around those years, also I did a lot of deep dive into the text, the Bible. Like if I'm an abomination, let's figure out why and how I got here. And is this really true? And clearly, after much study of my book and not listening to other people's opinions, well, God made me exactly who I am. That I'm not an abomination, that I'm not sinful, that I am who I am supposed to be, and God loves me and created me just like I am. And that start of liberation really pushed me to a place where I can live into my full non-binariness and really understand why lesbian or gay never fit me, because it also almost made me feel like I was denying still part of myself. Because the way that I identify non-binary is that I don't fit neatly into the main gender categories. There are parts of me that are feminine, and there are parts of me that are pretty masculine. And I fall somewhere in the middle. Some people might say I'm probably 99-1 or 90-10, but either way, it's a combination of both. And I respect that about myself. And I've learned to put language around that. And so I'm comfortable in they, them pronouns and comfortable in my own skin and my own identity that's different, which, like I said, I've always known I've been different than what is uplifted as the norm. Not necessarily what is norm, but what is uplifted as the norm. And then in loving my full self continue to be a journey. Most recently, since I turned 40, 3 years, almost 4 years ago, I said I wanted to live my life on purpose and different. I wanted to stop being afraid, and I wanted to stop running from some things. And so that started me on a journey of liberation for myself. And my home has always been a safe haven for Black women for many years. For various reasons, Black women have come and stayed with me or have found refuge either from abuse or being kicked out, teens when I was a youth pastor or whatever the case might be. And most recently, well, within around when I moved to Louisville, I had a friend come stay with me for over a month who, was having a mental breakdown. And so I realized that I've always had this kind of calling to be a safe place. And that, coupled with my journey of liberation, is how I got to Abolition House. And so Abolition House was created long before it was launched. And it is a place where of rest and renewal and revitalization and liberation, particularly for three main groups of people. Black women, because by God, Black women need a goddamn rest. Y'all carry the world on your shoulders and hold everybody else together. But where do you find a place to just lay it all down and rest? The second is BIPOC people of color, for obvious reasons, because the world is crazy. And then the third is around people who've had experienced hurt and harm from church or faith spaces. And so in the midst of all of that, I provide different modalities to help people find their true places of liberation. You want me to keep talking? I feel like I'm talking a lot.
Well, I wanted to go back just real quick because, I've been on this journey. Everybody wants me to go to seminary. So I always ask people, how did you know that that's what you were supposed to do? Like even having these feelings as a young person, and then going to college and then saying, oh, God's called me to seminary. How is that conversation?
Yeah, I always knew I was supposed to go to seminary before I knew what seminary was. I didn't know it was grad school till I got to college. If you want to be a minister, you're supposed to go there. And then when I got to college and realized it was grad school, I was like, oh shit, my grades matter.
So Bishop, so how did you become a PCUSA pastor? Like, how did that happen?
Because that is not how I grew up. I grew up Baptist. I was non-denominational for a long time. And then I got connected to a church while I was in seminary because I was looking, church I was at was great. It was non-denominational, but something was in me saying there has to be more than this. When I first got there, I thought it was the best thing since heaven. But somewhere along the way, it started being not enough. And I wanted something different, something more, something not what I was getting. And I got connected to a church in seminary. And I remember being there one day, and the pastor at the time said, just come join the choir. Just come and join the choir, check it out. I'm like, okay, you didn't heard me sing. I went and joined the choir, and I remember being there one Easter Sunday, and I was like, I felt the Spirit of the Lord tell me this is where I was supposed to be. And for good, bad, and otherwise, it was the platform I needed to be to get me where I am today. And that's how I became PCUSA. It was a Presbyterian church.
So the first time I heard your name, I was speaking to, I can't remember why. It must have been maybe, I just don't remember them being on the Sharon with Shani show, but I was speaking to Christian Brooks. And she was sharing her journey of seminary, of how she got to seminary. And matter of fact, we were, okay, now I remember. I don't know if I should say that. I don't know if I should say it on the podcast, so I won't. But now I know why we were talking. But anyway, like all throughout this story, she kept saying your name. And I was like, and I saw you on Facebook with friends that I know. And I was like, I got to meet this person because, because the impact that you have had on people's life, just planting a seed is, I want to be like that when I grow up. Like, I want people to remember me and be like, well, I wanted to be a PCUSA pastor because so-and-so. Like, my journey into Presbyterianism came after the night I lost my daughter to SIDS. And my then husband, Sunday school teacher, prayed with me. So denomination, I was like, it just felt like home.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a tradition where you couldn't ask questions. Like, you couldn't ask why God. And that's all, this whole year of 2009, that's all I kept asking was why God. And every question I would get, every time I would ask, this is so good, bad, and indifferent. What I love about this church, the PCUSA, is that I was able to ask questions in my brokenness and in my grief, that when I would ask about a scripture, when I would ask about why this happened, every single one of y'all pastors, I'm going to put all y'all in a group, would say, well, what do you think about what it says? What does it mean to you? And I had never experienced that before.
How very resentful of us.
Right. It made it feel like I didn't have to conform to someone else's interpretation of what the scripture meant to them. That I could take it and it could be a balm for me, however it needed to be.
Yeah. I love that.
I know. I'm glad we were recording because that was good shit.
Shit was. But I think that speaks to like your experience. Just reminds me that, like, we think of PCUSA sometimes as an institution, and it is. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I work at the headquarters of the institution, but it's also the people who make up that denomination that make the real difference on a real tangible level about what it means to be people of faith. And I think your story really speaks to that.
Because Jesy came into PCUSA kind of in a different way too, right? Like, you didn't grow up PCUSA, right?
No, I
was getting ready to call you Free Methodist, but that's not what you were.
No, I
don't even know what that is.
I don't know if that's a thing, Shani. I grew up in a non-denominational, you could call it a church, but it's really actually a cult called the Way International out of New Knoxville, Ohio. They are like, people have done studies on them. They're a cult. So I came out of that when I was 18 and started to attending a United Methodist Church. And then at college, when I went to college, their options are few, even though I was at a Christian school. I started attending an EPC church, was an Evangelical Presbyterian Church, which is on the more conservative side of Presbyterianism. And then that went south very quickly because I came out and they didn't like that. And so then my wife and my fiance at the time, were like, we can't do this. Like, it's not safe for us. And when we moved to Maryland, our faith was always important to us. But we didn't know where we were going to be safe at. We didn't know which church we could walk into because I had gone through some very scary stuff when I was in school. And so Sarah didn't want me to walk back into that, and she didn't want to put herself in that. And so we just did a basic Google search that said gay friendly churches near me, and More Light Presbyterian came up, their website. And the church that we are attending now, Oakland's Presbyterian Church in Laurel, Maryland, was literally right around the block. We passed it every day on our way to get to Target or get to work. And it just happened to be like less than 3 minutes away from our house. And so we walked in and there were gay people around us, and we have been there ever since, 10 years now.
But the funny thing is that they walked in the day of a congregational meeting.
Yeah, it was the annual, they were going over their budget.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was the funniest story.
Yeah, our pastor's always like, that's the best day to come because you get to like learn the workings of the church and like see if it's, on the up and up.
I mean,
that's not an unfactual statement.
And so with that being said, like, coming into this, I think because a lot of times, I'm in DC, and I've shared this probably on this show, I don't know, but I know I share it all the time, that my kids, like, going to DC public schools are always like, y'all not Baptist? Like, they don't people, like Black people in DC don't understand PCUS. They don't understand Presbyterian. Either you non-denominational or you're Baptist, right? And so I have just been, I don't even know where I was going with that story, but I was trying to make a connection and I totally forgot. It totally slipped my mind where I was trying to make a bookend.
Can I say this though?
Yes.
None of us have, of the three of us, none of us have Presbyterian roots, but somehow we found a way here because it provided for us a place of refuge when other places did not. And it provided for us a place of growth and understanding when we really need it. And I think that speaks a lot to why I'm still here.
Yeah. Yes, that's where I wanted to go. It is why I love it so much that I want to, have these conversations, do the work that I do. And so, because it has always been a place of refuge for me. And just reminds me of what it really means to be in beloved community.
Yeah. And it's not to say that it don't look the other way sometimes too. Let's not make it sound like it's all roses, because I've had the worst pain of my life from people in the Presbyterian church too.
That part, yes.
Yeah.
And let's be clear.
Yeah. Ditto. On both sides, if I want to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to what you said a couple episodes ago, Shani, that like you keep doing the work because you love the church. And I think like part of doing the work is seeing it for all that it is, the good and the not so good side, and wanting it to get better and working until it is in the image of what God intended it for the church to be. Are we ever going to get there? I have no idea. But that's the hope.
Yeah, that is the hope. So what for Abolition House, what's coming up next for you? I know you had its first retreat back in January. Anything up and coming?
Yeah, we have a lot of things up and coming. we are starting what I'm calling Lala, which is our Liberation and Accountability Circle, for some folks who are members or have membership within Abolition House. We also have two more retreats coming up later this year. One is for masculine of center, female body folk, and that's coming up in September. And then I'm working on a somatic justice retreat for the end of the year. And so those are some things that are coming up. We're doing a fundraising campaign so we can get our actual building of the retreats we are doing now. I'm hosting at different locations in outside of Atlanta, because that is where Abolition House will reside. Particularly, the goal is Douglasville, for a couple of reasons. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing right now. I'll be offering some other online free offerings, and you got to keep up with our social media to catch out what's coming up next, and our website, abolitionhouse.com.
And the social media is Abolition House on all social media platforms.
On Instagram, we're Abolition House. Facebook, if you're connected to me on Facebook, we don't have a Facebook page because I don't know that our demographic really uses it. But I keep hearing that we need to do one, so probably will have. But the best to always look is our website and our
Okay.
Instagram.
Abolitionhouse.com website.
Yep, and the Abolition House on Instagram.
And you're taking donations, correct?
Always.
Yes. You did a love on your damn self webinar for in February. Can you talk a little bit about what was the inspiration for that? It was beautiful, by the way. I enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Excellent. That's good to hear. I always like to hear feedback. So the inspiration behind that is that far too often it was right the day before Valentine's Day, right? And I think there's a whole lot of pressure on that time of year, and even what's called cuffing season, or time of hibernation, where people are like, I've got to be partnered up, I've got to have somebody love one, and then if I don't, then what does that say about me? And that's when insecurities begin to rise, anxiety, all the things that we create in our social bubbles that really are inflated and don't really matter. And so what does it mean then to take all that energy we put on trying to put our love outward to someone else and find some type of partner, to putting it on ourselves? The best relationship you can have on this earth is the relationship you have with your damn self. And so what does it look like to date yourself, to cultivate yourself, and to really indulge in deeper sense of self-care and self-pleasure, you say? And so, we think self-care is, I go get my hair done, or I get my nails done. And that's grooming. Like, we should all do that. Self-care means things like setting boundaries in your life. Self-care means knowing the power of your no. And so what does it, and other things like that. So what does it mean to really love on your damn self in this season, and not always looking for someone else to fulfill that need?
Yeah.
How does that work play into, because I was looking at your website, how does that play into you being what you describe as a sex doula or a sexologist, that sense of loving yourself and taking care of yourself? And how does that work as a ministry for you?
I'm so glad you call it a ministry, because that's exactly what it is. So for me, a sex doula is, that training is akin. I'm not saying just like, I'm saying akin to even being trained in my master's degree or being trained to be a pastor. Because at the end of the day, it's all about communication. When I'm trained as a pastor, I'm trained in a modality of how to communicate as a conduit for God and the people. Right? That's part of it. That's the role that Moses plays. This is the role that all preachers and prophets have played, past, present, and future. And so, what does it mean to really delve into the nuances of communication and embodiment in our spiritual life? As a sex doula, we take that part of our spirituality and connect it to what it means to be fully present in our bodies as well. And to what does it mean to really delve into the nuances of communication and eroticism and intimacy and sexuality, and in my own bodily autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, is a way of helping people get liberated from the things that have shackled us. One of the things that I always said that I'm a 21st century abolitionist. And because I'm helping you get liberated in a different way, white supremacy culture keeps us in all types of frameworks. And one of those frameworks is around our own body and our own bodily autonomy and our own sense of pleasure. And so what does it look like to erase and eradicate that framework from our mindset, from our faith, and from our connection to ourselves and our sense of what we need and what we deserve in this life?
That's awesome. How does that come into play, like, or has it come into play, excuse me, like in queer circles, especially for people who are trans or who are gender nonconforming, and that sense of like loving their body? Like, is it difficult to kind of enter that space sometimes?
Yeah, and I think that's where I can bridge who I am and what I do in a really concrete way.
Yeah.
Because a sex doula is a trained professional, just like pastors are trained professional. That and we provide as sex doulas, this idea or this space to really delve into physical, emotional, and support one needs to really be in their body. White supremacy culture teaches us. I keep saying, I hate that. But white supremacy culture tells us a lot that we are to think, right? Everything is what do you think about that? What do you know about that? It's all about worship of the written word. But what does it mean, though, to get back to our carnal selves, our kind of rudimentary selves of what do we feel? What do you know in your gut versus what do you only know in your head knowledge? And so connecting to the queer and trans community is a way of connecting our embodiment in a way that gets you out of your head and into your true self.
I think a lot of people are ready to tap into what they feel.
Oh, people are scared shitless to do that.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do we think that is?
Well, I think it's because one, fear. Right? Because if I really sit with myself and look at myself and deal with myself, am I going to like myself?
That part.
And am I going to have to deal with the stuff that I've swept under the rug so much that it becomes so bumpy I can't even walk? And so people don't want to deal with their shit, and we don't want to really unpack it. Like, liberation is a courageous journey, and so being able to be a doula to really help someone walk through or live through or push through their place of liberation is an honor, because it takes a lot of courage to do so.
Yeah. I love it. It reminds me, I've been on this journey, and almost as moderator, I get the opportunity to preach at a lot of churches, and we've shared it on this show. We've shared it on the Share with Shani show. So I'm like really convinced that part of our problem, especially in this country, is that we don't love ourselves, which it is also like a commandment that Jesus like assumed we would already have within us when he said, love your neighbor as yourself, right? And yet we see it play out in the things that we do, right? When we project on other people, people have a bad day, so they go shoot people. Like, there is a lack of self-love because we are, I believe that we've been taught, especially Christian people or faith people have been taught that, that's the ego thing. Like, if you care about yourself, you got to care about other people and not yourself, right? And so I feel like when you tap into liberation at its peak, that you will love even the parts about you that you once feared or hated. Like, you will even love that part about you, right? Because it's all part of loving yourself. Like, even loving the procrastination, even that's me. I'm talking to myself when I say that. Even loving that I go about things in life that will have other people freak out, and I can't conform to anything to make you feel better. Like, I can't do that. And for so long I did. Like, I I would put my hair a certain way. I shared that story too many times. I don't feel like doing it anymore. But like I took my last $40 back when I was out of college for a job that I didn't even get to buy this wig that didn't even look right because I couldn't get my hair done for 2 weeks because they couldn't see my natural hair.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say that, I do coaching as well. Part of Abolition House is one-on-one coaching with clients. And one of the main things that I deal with clients all the time is this idea around loving yourself. Like, what does it mean to really, truly, at your core, be content, is the word, with who you are? And I'm not saying, I don't strive every day to eat right, be better and that type of thing, because that's also about taking care of myself. But, that I'm fit. I'm gonna look, there's a little jiggle again. I'm fit and I'm okay with that. Like, I love me. That's why I'm not cold all the time like other people. I'm good with me. Like, I'm learning to love me for who I am, learning to love, that I'm quick with it. Like, I got a smart, not very smart mouth, but I got a joke. I'm going to have a joke. Like, I'm loving those parts of me that other people, like, might find annoying or might not. Like, there's parts of me that I just, like you said, the procrastination, things about myself that help me know that I'm fearfully and wonderfully and uniquely created by God. There's nobody else that can be me but me. So I might as well be the best me that I can be. And realizing that each of us has a gift and a place and a purpose in this world. So why would I alter that if God has placed it in me to give to the world?
Yeah. So good. That's good. Jesy, you have any final questions before we do rapid fire?
No, I'm just trying to soak it all in. I'm just like sitting here, like, because you and I talked about it, Shani, like a week or so ago, about that sense of, like, you were talking about your friend who was just kind of battling their own sexuality and whatnot.
Yes.
And like,
and you put it in perspective in such a good way, because I was so mad. Like, so just to share, so the bishop doesn't know we're not having a side conversation. I was so frustrated. I was at dinner with a friend and her friend, and they're denying this attraction between the two of them. Her friend is in ministry, and her friend is in ministry and has and I'm just like, they are so, like, they're not free yet. And it was hurting my feelings. Like, it was hurting my feelings to sit across from them and like, why can't y'all just be together? Like, why can't you just be free? And I text Jesy because one thing about Jesy always lets you see the other side, right? Like, I said her, I was mad because I was like, 6 years ago, I was quoting Billy Graham. Why would I do that? And Jesy was like, there could be
two things can be true.
Two things can be true. Like, there was a reminder, right? But so, and Jesy, what did you tell me in that moment on the text message? You said,
I said that internalized homophobia is real. And it's real in such a way that it's still real for me. Like, even though I'm out and I live out and I'm proud of being out, and like I am an advocate for other people to come out when and if they are ready, there is still so much. And this goes back to white supremacy and that framework that we're supposed to follow of this is how things are supposed to be, that even in my own queerness, I still have to combat my own self-hate, because that was what I grew up with, was you are an abomination. And I have not completely, fully reconciled myself to be who I am in the creation of God. It's almost that fake it till you make it. Like, I'm going to keep saying this, that I am created in God's image. I am created to be loved. I am beloved by God. I have to keep saying it until I fully believe it, because for so long I didn't.
Yeah, it's like this relearn, like you got to unlearn what you learn, period. It doesn't matter what it is, right? Just you have to unlearn what you've learned.
It's a lifelong process because we still live in America, and white supremacy is as American as Donald Trump being indicted.
Yeah.
So, it's the ethos of what we live in, and so every day is enough. Every freaking day until the day we die.
I think you just have to wake up one day and be like, I just want to be different.
Yeah. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that, like you said, Jesy, that you're still not going to have to do the process every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more liberated than I am right now in my life on March 31st, 2023 than I ever have been in my 44 years on this earth. However, I still have so far to go.
Mm-hmm.
Still an unlearning.
Yeah, I think that's why I hate the rhetoric. Like, when people are like, oh, well, you have gay marriage now, and you have this or that, or like you have the right to vote now, or you have this or that, or like we had a Black president. Like, yeah, that's true, but that's like one thing in this pot of oppression that people have had to deal with their entire lives and for centuries.
But that's
that
still
it doesn't make up for all of it. That does, like, these little pinpoints in history don't make up for everything.
And it's still a scarcity mindset to say that. Well, you have right, you have this little bit, but you can't. So don't expect any more.
Right. Yeah. And scarcity mindset is a part of
white supremacy culture.
It's the most popular thing in this country. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jesy, for season 2, we gotta get like an easy button that says white supremacy culture. We gotta hit the button every time we say that.
So that'll just be the whole podcast, just pressing that button.
Friend Bishop Shenea, thank you so much for coming on today. I love you in so many ways. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Jesy, it was nice to meet you.
You as well. I will admit, I have seen you on Facebook like a million times, and you're definitely one of those, like, you always show up in my people you may know, because you're friends. We have a lot of mutual friends, and like you show up at different conferences, and I always see you. And Shani has met you and talked about you, and like you're one of those people that I have seen from a distance that, like, oh, they would be really cool to be friends with. But I don't know them, so I'm not going to friend request you. So I definitely sent you a friend request while we were doing this interview, because I'm like, well, now I've talked to them, so I can friend request them.
And don't be surprised. Oh, and don't be surprised, because I friend requested them a year and a half. It took a year and a half for them to follow me back, right? And it was the funniest thing. It'd be like, oh, that's you. But I will say this, like, I mean, hospitable, can cook their ass off, like all the good things. So we end the show, Bishop, with rapid fire questions. You don't think about it. Just give us the first answer that comes to your head.
Are you sure you want to do that with me?
Yes.
Questions are easy questions.
Okay.
You can start, Jesy.
All right. What's your go-to beverage?
Water.
Favorite streaming platform?
A Pandora.
Well, like, even for watching stuff like Netflix,
Hulu.
Disney, Hulu. Okay, cool. What's your go-to music? So Pandora would be your go-to music platform, not Apple or like Spotify.
Pandora or Tidal.
Okay.
Disney or Nickelodeon?
Nickelodeon.
Concert or comedy show?
Comedy show.
Leftover pizza, eat it cold or heat it up?
Heat it up.
What gives you hope?
My godchildren and my grandbaby.
One word to describe how you feel right now.
Tired.
What's your goal for this year?
501c3 status for Abolition House.
Yes.
One thing we should know about you.
I think I'm funny.
I didn't laugh at that because I didn't think that was funny.
You're not funny, dear.
What song do you have on repeat right now?
Every now and then I always have on repeat my favorite song of all time, which is Donny Hathaway, A Song for You. The Donny Hathaway live version, actually.
Okay. And the last question is, what does love mean to you?
Love means God.
Take as much time as you need on this one.
Love is God. Love is more than an emotion. Love is an action verb. Love is something that is steady and yet changing. Love is multi-layered, multifaceted, and multi-directional at any given time. And love is balance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is fun.
Pause. Time to hear from our sponsors. The Embracing Race podcast is sponsored by the Gen Out Youth Chorus. Gen Out is an outreach ensemble of the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C. Gen Out's mission is to give young LGBTQ+ and allied youth a voice to connect to the community. The ensemble is open to all singers between the ages of 13 and 18. For more information, contact www.gmcw.org. Isn't it our hope that we could come together as a society across the chasm of race and become the beloved community that Dr. King imagined? Interwoven Congregation's mission is to organize and support partnerships between faith communities with different racial compositions in order to foster racial justice and healing. For more information, visit interwovencongregations.org. HOD Records. It is not HOD, but it is HOD, no periods in between. HOD Records is a talent and artist development company that specializes in artistry development and content creation. Serving the DMV and beyond, HOD creates a family-centered management style that promotes a collaborative spirit. Check out HOD Records on all social media platforms and visit hodrecords.media for more information. Thank you all to our sponsors.
The Embracing Race podcast, hosted by elders Shani and Jesy Littlejohn, tackles all topics from pop culture to faith and the intersectionality of white supremacy and racism. Nothing is off limits, as we hope to educate and transform with radical love. For more information, visit us at embracingrace.online or on Instagram at embracing_race_podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, or if you would like to submit a comment or question, please email embracingracepodcast@gmail.com.